Hey friends, it's Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel Terry and I'm the author of 3 young adult fantasy books. Information will be in the description box down below if you're interested. Today I will be sharing my review of Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. This is a young adult fantasy novel about a young nun named Artemisia who ends up teaming up with a revenant, which is this sort of malicious spirit, in order to save her convent from attack. Artemisia is a nun called a Grey Sister, and what the Grey Sisters do is they purify the dead so that their spirits don't rise again and possess people, essentially. In this world, the dead are not at peace, and unless the bodies are purified, the spirits will never find rest. Their job is very important, as you can imagine. But the possession that has been going on is getting worse, and one day possessed soldiers show up at Artemisia's convent and attack, and in a moment of desperation, in order to save her fellow nuns and the convent from attack, Artemisia interacts with a powerful relic which contains a revenant. There are only 7 revenants if I remember correctly, and this is one of them, and Artemisia has had no training. She doesn't understand anything about this revenant other than it's quite powerful, and so she's not had the training on how to control this revenant. It attempts to possess her, but she manages to stave it off and wields its power to help stop the attack. And as a result of this, she and the Revenant end up going on a journey to try to understand why the possessions are more frequent, why it's getting worse, and who's behind all of this bigger picture. One of the things I most loved about this book was that there is no romance to it, and this is something that is quite rare, especially when it comes to YA fantasy, but there's no romance in it. And part of the reason for that is that Artemisia and the Revenant spend a lot of time alone. It's just the two of them, and this caused the middle of the book, in my opinion, to bog down a little bit. I thought it was a little slower paced, but by design of the plot, that was naturally going to happen, because it is just Artemisia and this Revenant as they're traveling, trying to not only stay alive, but also figure out what is going on. I thought the magic system in this book was very well done. The beginning scene especially is very atmospheric, and I just really liked it. It's one of those very niche specific things that I really like. We have a nun who is battling the spirits of the dead, and I just really like that. I heard that this was going to be part of a series, but as far as I know, there's been no news on the second book, and I know that traditional publishing timelines have really kind of slowed down here recently, so I don't know if it's still in the works and it's just going to take a little bit longer for us to get it, but I can't see anything about a series. There's no series listed on Goodreads, it's just Vespertine listed alone, and I think that's actually okay. There's obviously more that can be done with this world and this story, and the way that the book ends, it leaves it kind of open-ended. It's a satisfying conclusion on its own, but there's also definitely the possibility of more to come. Personally, I'm satisfied with the way that the book ended, and whether we get another one or not, I'm fine with either option, really. I feel like my book reviews are getting shorter, and I hope that everybody is okay with that they don't mind the shorter reviews, and I think that's just because I've made the decision to only talk about books that I have positive feelings on. It's much harder for me to do that. It's harder for me to convey why I liked a book than it is why I didn't, because I feel like I have more of an explanation to give when I didn't like something, other than when I do like something, I'm just telling you why I liked it, but I don't feel like that might hold as much weight. So I don't have as much to say about these books that I did enjoy, but this was a refreshing kind of revisit, so to speak, of why I like YA, both reading it and writing it. I have encountered several YA books lately that made me think I'm better off just abandoning this genre, like finally admitting that I've outgrown this genre and stopping reading it. I think part of the reason I liked Vespertine, aside from the whole premise of it, was that Artemisia is not your typical YA fantasy heroine. She prefers the company of dead people than to the living. It's kind of implied in the story that she might be neurodivergent, but that's never confirmed one way or the other. But even so, I'm not neurodivergent myself, but I related to her very heavily in that she just wants to be left alone to do her job. She doesn't really like being around people. People are confusing. They act irrationally, and they're not always the nicest, so I definitely related to her about that. She just wants to stay where she is and work as a Grey Sister. She doesn't really have any ambitions beyond that, whereas some of her fellow nuns really just want to get out of this convent. She does form a friendship with one of the other nuns, and it's kind of a surprise to her, because out of all of the people there, she never would have imagined that her and this other nun would get along so well. But she's not without friends in this book, and the Revenant itself is its own complex personality. It has its own personality, its own motivations. You're not entirely sure what you're going to get with it, because it's not wholly this malevolent presence that Artemisia was led to believe that it was. I really liked the world building in the sense that you've got this clergy, so to speak. You have different ranks within the clergy. You have things like clerics, and again, that's just a very niche specific thing that I really enjoy. And it was refreshing to read a fantasy book, a YA fantasy book, where the main character wasn't an idiot and she wasn't focused on romance. There was no romance, and so I can't tell you how many times I've read YA books where the main character might start out decent on her own and she has goals and motivations, but the moment she lays eyes on the hot guy, all of that goes out the window and she basically loses all sense of her own identity. You didn't have to worry about that here, which I really appreciated. So if you're looking for a plot-driven YA fantasy that doesn't have any romance, I would highly recommend this one. So there you have it. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. I appreciate each and every one of you. My name is Rachel Terry. I'm the author of 3 young adult fantasy books, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!